This podcast was produced by OAR FM Dunedin with support from New Zealand On the Air.
Right On, showcasing the work of Otago Southland writers. I'm Beverly Martens. Join me for news and interviews with local writers on the second Wednesday of every month from noon till 1 and replayed the following Sunday at 1 p.m. Right On is brought to you by the Otago Southland branch of the New Zealand Society of Authors and kindly supported by the great team at the University Bookshop.
What do you want to be when you grow up? They say you are what you read, and the University Bookshop can help you be whoever you want to be. Do you want to be an athlete? Then sit down with an inspiring sports biography. Do you fancy yourself as a detective? We have a grisly lineup of murder mysteries waiting just for you. Do you aspire to be the world's greatest chef? We have cookbooks to tantalise your taste buds. Do you want to celebrate your inner child? Play up in our fabulous children's room. The University Bookshop, helping you decide what you want to be when you grow up.
Hello and welcome to this month's edition of Right On. I'm your host, Beverly Martens. Now, it's been an interesting time recently in terms of women and women's issues. We've just had Mother's Day celebrating women in that lifelong vocational role. We've just had International Nurses Day ostensibly celebrating women in that caring profession. And yet these have occurred against a political climate, both here and overseas, that doesn't seem to be kind of valuing the contribution that women make in many spheres, including in the workplace. So this month I want to kind of reflect on that, the joys, the triumphs, the disappointments, and women of my age, the frustration of eroded gains. So when you and I want to view these all through a sort of creative lens. So buckle up, because first, folks, we've got a free-ranging and frank discourse with my guest Mikaela Nyman, and then that's followed by a couple of poignant woman-centric poems, some important opportunities that I want to tell you about, and all interspersed with soothing theme-related music. So, as many of you will recall, I spoke to last year's Burns Fellow, Mikaela Nyman, early last year. In fact, it was about 13 months ago, when she was just settling into her Burns fellowship year, which was brilliant for both her and the whole writing community in Dunedin, because she was so damn generous with her time. So what I'm going to play for you now is the chat I had with her a couple of days ago, and it's ostensibly about the launch of her new poetry collection, Anatomy of Sand, but actually it's really so much more than that. Lovely to talk with you again, Mikaela. I mean, we last spoke on the show April of last year when you were settling in to the Burns Fellowship, and 2024 was such a huge year for you, not only being awarded the Burns, you had that major literary prize in Sweden. Do you want to do a quick recap of sort of the highlights of your Burns year and beyond?
Oh, well, thanks for having me, Beverly. It was an amazing year. There was so many things that happened, but it had its ups and downs as well, especially when it came to publishing. You need to have that kind of energy to deal with the whole publishing thing as well. It's not enough to write something if you want to get it out into the world.
It's a job, isn't it? Yeah, it really is a job after you think you've done your job of producing the goods. Yeah.
Absolutely. And it takes time and energy to kind of bounce back as well. And publishers these days are maybe not as willing to discuss things. You read about these amazing writers decades and decades and decades ago who had something that was half decent, and then they worked for a year or whatever with an editor to actually bring it to fruition. Those stories exist out there, and I can't even imagine any editor being willing to put in that much effort into something now, which is sad, because actually you don't know, you always second guess what is needed out there or what would be read. And when it comes to commercial versus literary, you have a whole different discussion. And, you just need to hit the right person at the right
Right
time with
time,
your stuff.
yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
whether it's reader
Yeah,
or
yeah.
publisher. Yeah.
I mean, I think from what I'm sort of hearing, what you're saying is that you have to do more polishing yourself, but also, in the end, sometimes it's, it's just a bit of luck that
Yeah.
so you just have to have something as ready as you can make it, and then you have to kind of, shop it around and hope that it lands with the right
Yeah. I think
person.
it's more than luck, though. I mean, you have to really have stamina and dedication and believe in your craft. And I guess that's where you need friends and family to be there and support you, because it's very easy to lose your belief in what you have put out in the world and second guess everything. But things are changing so fast that there needs to be a serendipitous meeting. And especially you wanted to discuss a bit about women. I think for women, it's actually quite hard because many of us have put off the writing part while we are raising a family. And then we start later. And, if we are not hot young chicks of 30 or fit any other marketable category, it's very easy to overlook. And I don't quite know why, with the wisdom that comes with living a longer life and the more knocks you've had, these stories become just more important and deeper and more
And more
complex.
and more authentic, right? Well, so
Yeah.
we were going to recap on the highlights, and we
Oh, yeah.
we haven't.
No.
But look,
So the
that's
highlight,
fine.
well,
Yeah.
the whole
So,
Burns year was a highlight, I have to say. The whole Burns year was amazing. And it also, I think, gendered opportunities to get yourself in front of people. I think I became a bit of a performance poet in the course of it, enjoying wonderful time at the Octagon Poetry Collective, National Flash Fiction Day, various Society of Authors events, and other reading events like the Literary Salon. There were so many generous and amazing people, writers and readers in Dunedin. And I said it many times last year that you don't know how lucky you are. Sitting in New Plymouth now, in comparison, is poverty on the
that's
writing
interesting.
and reading front. Yes,
Right.
but we don't have that kind of literary scene. There aren't that many poets, or, like the critical mass that you have in Dunedin is amazing. The variety and, yeah, the generosity to come as a total outsider and be invited in. I'm so grateful for that.
But Mikaela, I want to add that you grabbed it with both hands too. You could have shut your door at the office at the university and went, no, I'm working. I mean, you gave freely of your time and expertise too. So it was definitely a very mutual thing, and I guess that's always the balance that you're looking for as a creative person is being supported and being part of a community. But you do have to shut the door, or you wouldn't have got this collection together, would you?
Absolutely, and I think that that balance is very hard to find, because I can honestly say I was quite starved when I came to Dunedin, but I had also worked really hard over the summer. So when I was given this amazing literary prize that came out of nowhere in Finland on the 5th of February, Runeberg's Day, which is the Finnish poet, it was the same day I was supposed to be in Dunedin, and I just couldn't fathom traveling across the world just to be part of a lineup of awardees and then have to return and travel back. It felt wrong for so many reasons, and also because no one wants to meet someone else in the midst of winter in Finland. Not even my dad. He was worried about viruses and other things. So why would you travel so far for that? And at the same time, I've kicked myself ever since. And at the same time, I got a wonderful summer in Dunedin, the late summer part. So
We do. Yeah, I think it's called autumn, but we we do that well.
February.
Yeah, yeah. Well, sometimes, I would this year being case in point, where I think we had summer on a Tuesday that I was away, but we have had a lovely autumn. Right now, so to me, it's interesting that you have, you're talking about some of your self-doubts and things, because you've always struck me as being right in amongst it, doing what you can to support other people. I'm talking about with your kind of mentoring and judging of things, all sorts of things like that. And then, you seem just very busy in this space. Or is it just the fact that sometimes you're just throwing everything at the wall and a few things stick, and sometimes they all coalesce together in it? Yeah.
I think in the beginning of anyone's kind of writing career, you start by throwing out a lot of things. And as time passes, the things you throw out, more and more of them actually stick and land, and people want to collaborate and they want to do quite large things. And so, living the gig economy and never knowing where money comes from, and also having this appalling pay equity thing happening. I've been the main breadwinner in my family for many years, and just think if we are constantly downgraded as women, so 50% of the population should not earn as much as the other 50. And it's the same for writers, that, writers who are men seem to be revered when they grow older and gray-haired silver foxes and whatnot, whereas women writers are not always the case. And so I thought Renee was amazing.
Yes,
she was 60
absolutely.
when she had her Robert Burns Fellowship, and she really took off after that. So why are we such an ageist and gender discriminatory society and afraid of so many other things, when actually we have everything here? We could have such a wonderful, more inclusive society where everyone actually has a right to live and earn a living. We don't know where the next kind of rent pay is going to come from at the moment. So a lot of my time is also spent on this gig economy, trying to get some income that is somehow predictable. And in between, I have these opportunities and I jump at them because I don't know when I will have time next. But that means that you always feel kind of caught on the back foot. And I've stopped trying to feel guilty for having to dedicate time to my craft. But it is hard to carve out enough time in the day, and steadily to be able to do that. And that's what residencies and stipends and, oh my goodness, if we had some universal basic income that actually valued what we can bring, we could also help in schools and teaching and other things, but we are not allowed in somehow unless we have a teaching degree, and and we might not want to be teachers all the time, but we can contribute.
Absolutely. I think, though, that what you're also talking about is what you try and do is keep up the momentum, and I think you've done that really well. Even if it's a little bit of a lot of things, it's still all about the momentum, because then you do get a bit of a profile, and then people come to you, and then you can collaborate on other things, and so it sort of builds on itself. So let's move to the positives of all of that, which is, of course, what we really want to talk about today, because it's about to be launched, and this is your third collection of poetry. And the first written in English, not just, I shouldn't say just, I apologise for that, not translated from Swedish. And that is The Anatomy of Sand. Now, did that present its own challenges, given that Swedish is your native tongue?
Yes, but I have to say, I actually started writing poetry in English here in New Zealand. So for me, the challenge has been writing in Swedish and writing myself back to my mother tongue in a way. But yes, of course, the challenge for anyone who, English is my fourth language. And when I'm tired, I fall into the trap of trying to make it sound like proper English or whatever you would say. And that means you can fall into staid language, cliche, all these things just by accident, because you think that sounds more right than what you're trying to do. And at the same time, what poetry does so beautifully is that you can use your own syntax to actually to your strengths. You can play to your strengths with the way you chop off sentences or how you add. I've been told I talk in fragmented sentences, which are not very academic. Well, but it lends itself.
That's poetry.
Yay.
Fragments are poetry. You're using the sparse scaffolding to create, a bigger picture, I would think.
Yeah.
Now, just changing tack slightly in that your second collection, the translated title of that is To Get Out of a Riptide, You Must Move Sideways. This collection is called The Anatomy of Sand. So obviously water and beaches are such a recurring theme in your work. Does that stem from your childhood growing up in the Åland Islands?
Yeah, I think I mean, I am a child of the sea, absolutely. So mountains kind of frighten me. And now I live here, wedged between Mount Taranaki and the sea. But we don't have tides at all. And, the highest mountain in my Åland Islands, Årdals Klint, is only 129 meters over sea level. And of course, we've seen the pollution of the Baltic Sea, where we used to fish all the time. We ate so much fish that now is scarce, like cod and also the herring that actually built the wealth of the Åland Islands. But also sailors came from there here to New Zealand. And so some of, the people I know, their grandfathers and whatnot, they were here in New Zealand back in the day, even in New Plymouth. So I think that's quite fascinating how the sea divides us, but it also connects us. And, we don't have much sand in the Åland Islands. It's red granite polished by the inland ice, very flat and very red, like strawberry red granite. And then I come here and it's this craggy volcanic rock or the sandstone cliffs that crumble. And yeah, it's so totally different, not to mention the black beaches here in Taranaki.
But there is the sand and the beaches and the dunes and things, but underlying that, I mean, the themes in this collection, I haven't had the chance to read it yet, but they are kind of... it is about some of the themes are about degradation and climate change and things, aren't they, Mikaela? That's important to you?
Absolutely. I mean, the environment is so important for me. I think that is what has kept me steady and keeps me going. I have to go out for a walk or a bike ride and just check that the sea is still there and that we are okay somehow. But I also really mourn the loss of what has happened to our environment, both in my home islands and also here. I see how the cliff face falls down. So part of the anatomy of sand, there are things that I have kind of observed over a number of years, and they're gone. They're, crumbled and disappeared, eaten by the sea. And so this happens so quickly. And I think one of the things reviewers said about my second Swedish collection was that it was so full of hope still. And I think that is one of the important parts that, we need to keep some hope, or how will we keep going and how will we be there for our kids? And so humor is important. Playing with words is important. Kind of picking up on stuff you observe that has a scientific meaning or background or all those things that go off on tangent. They are beautiful. And I love that. I do probably have a lot of curiosity that I can't satisfy.
I don't think you can be a creative without without curiosity being your superpower. I mean, it's certainly mine as well. So let's get to the actual details of the launch, which is next Tuesday, the 20th of May at 5:30 at University Bookshop down here in Dunedin, Mikaela. We're going to see you again, and that's going to be lovely. Can you share any other of the sort of more secret details of the launch, just quickly?
Well, before the launch, I'm actually going to go to Auckland Writers Festival and be able to talk about the anatomy of sand on an amazing panel with Nordic writers Lars Mytting and Elin Anna Labba, who is from Sápmi up north, the Sami. in Sweden. And that is fantastic. So I'm coming straight from Auckland Writers Festival to Dunedin, and I can't wait to see Dunedin again. And, really, yeah, took a place in my heart. And Lindy Edmeades is going to do the honors, and I'm so delighted about that. And yeah, I don't know. There
That's
will
high
be one
praise,
or two
isn't it?
poems.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure you get a great turnout. Lindy Edmeades, I'm sure most listeners know, but I'll just recap, is the editor of Landfall magazine, who are about to, the next, not the issue that's out shortly, but slightly later in the year. I mean, that's their 250th issue. So, that's an incredible milestone as well. All right, let's talk specifically about the writer adjacent things that you do. And that one of the things I wanted to talk about is your mentoring, because last week, again via Zoom, what would we do without Zoom? Is that I tuned into Nicola Thorstenson's reading her Kathleen Grattan award-winning sequence of poems, and you mentored her, didn't you? And it showed. I mean that in a really good way, because the sparsity, I think, was there. And I had Nicola and I are in the same writing group, so I had heard earlier drafts of some of these things, and it was just an absolute pleasure to hear them all sort of laid out end to end. I just wanted to talk about mentoring for a little bit. What do you think the key role of being a mentor is, and how do you approach it?
Well, I have been a mentor for New Zealand Society of Authors for a few years now. And right now I'm actually mentoring someone who's writing a novel. And I think the key thing is to always be there and support the person to do their best within their own kind of limits and range, but also to challenge them to step away maybe from what they are used to doing or tend to gravitate towards, and say, hey, have you read these people? Or this reminded me of such and such. Have you thought about giving this a try? Kind of being there as their biggest fan and cheerleader and supporter, and at the same time trying to gently just give some stretch goals and say, hey, try this. You won't destroy what you have, but you might discover something new,
Excellent. That's really, I love that about the stretch goals. I think that's a great thing. So you're nudging them, but you're not pushing them, if that makes sense.
Oh, and some people want to be pushed. I mean, it's all about who you are as a person as well. So I think a mentor just needs to really be there for the person they are mentoring, and just sometimes you end up being a huge confidant too.
Yes.
That there's someone who has had bad treatment by whatever, the establishment, let's say, and you are there just to listen and not to judge. But you can also be there trying to find a constructive way out of things. So it can be tricky. I don't think I don't want to imprint my way of doing things on anyone, but I do want to invite them out to play, if that makes sense.
That's a great description, because I think that's really hard, because you can sometimes think, oh, if it was me, I would just do that, I'd just fix that, get the red pen out, as it were, and you've got to keep that in your pencil case. Listeners, I'm speaking with Mikaela Nyman, last year's Burns Fellow, about her new poetry collection, The Anatomy of Sand, which is published by Te Rangawaka University Press, who also, I think, did your climate change novel, Sado, I think about 5 years ago. So, Mikaela, it's been great to chat, but can we sort of wrap it up with you introing and reading one of the poems from Anatomy of Sand, please?
Yeah. So, just to give a bit of context, German backpacker Birgit Brauer was found murdered at Lucy's Gully in Taranaki right after I came here in 2005. And near the gully, in a grove of California redwood, is a memorial plaque to horticulturalist Sir Victor Caddy Davis. And he was lived 1887 to 1977. So he, had a long life, successful businessman. And the text is, if you seek his monument, look around. And, the whole thing was a depression scheme plantation. And you look up and there's these amazing redwood trees. And I got to read this draft of this poem for a French poetry happening called Les Nuits de Forêt, so the Night of the Forest, and it was on video poetry, and that was very powerful. There was urban sketchers there, and an artist who kind of was doing imprints of the wood, the bark of the trees. So if you seek a monument, and this is in 2 voices, and it's a bit tricky to read because of that, because your brain takes in both sides. So I'll read his first and then hers. If you seek her monument, in memory of Birgit Brouwer, consignments of seeds and plants he exported, tons of Pinus radiata, trainloads of flax. Come 1970, his Westtown nursery was the largest Antipodean exporter and importer of shrubs. This cathedral of sequoia in Lucy's Gully, a lofty gift rooted in depression, slowly unfurling. Around that time, he won the inaugural Loader Cup for an exhibition of 500 New Zealand plants, each plant labelled and named with their appropriate growing conditions. Between leaves, a shimmering, thousands of sequins on a nude branch. Our daughters stand where her cloth body lay at the foothills of the Kaitaki Ranges. Wells in ink, a fingerprint, a smudge on a dead woman's address book. His only mistake, a mark that looks like the cross-section of the hill. But on this New Year's Day, no one is here to breathe in the redwood, not even the owner of the dress. She is the reason we still hike Lucy's Gully in packs.
Wow. What a huge, so, I mean, your curiosity leads you to these places, Mikaela, but then is the challenge to take very big concepts and, almost journalistic news about other people's lives and then distill them into something incredibly personal. Yeah?
Yeah, I guess you could say that. And I sometimes liken it to weaving. Because I do think that it's, something in between there. You need the personal, but you also need the universal. And the world is so much bigger than us, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It is. And that, the great thing about poetry sometimes is just being reminded of that, the awe and the wonder.
Mm.
Yeah, excellent. Oh, well, that is fantastic. Thank you so much, Mikaela. And going to be great to have you back here in Dunedin next Tuesday night for the official, in inverted commas, although, you're doing obviously other events as well, but they're sort of kind of official launch for us at the University Bookshop. It'll be a charming event, I'm sure, and lots of your relatively new but ongoing Dunedin friendships. I'm sure people will come out of the woodwork for you, Mikaela, and all the best with this collection called Anatomy of Sand.
Thank you. Thank you. It will be amazing. Thanks so much.
Wasn't that great? Now let's reflect on that while I play my first music track of this show, and it's about the highs and lows of young motherhood by Brandy Carlisle, called The Mother. Right, now I'm going to change tack slightly because I want to read a couple of poems that kind of underpin the things we're talking about with women's issues, women's challenges, women's juggling act. So this is a poem out of a fantastic anthology published a few years ago called Swings and Roundabouts, and it's poems on parenthood. I was lucky enough to have a poem in this anthology as well. That's not what I'm going to read today, but it was edited by Emma Neal. And Emma, of course, everyone in Dunedin knows Emma, and everyone is rooting for her tonight because she is shortlisted for her latest poetry collection at the Ockhams, which are, the winners are going to be announced tonight. She's also a former editor of Landfall, etc., etc. Her credentials are impeccable. So, This poem is also about the mother-daughter relationship, but a lot further on in each of their lives. It's called Mother and Daughter, the translation, and it's by Kapka Kasabova. Now, Kapka is an award-winning Bulgarian poet, travel writer and novelist who has lived in New Zealand, Europe, the UK, and now I understand she's domiciled up in Scotland, and she describes herself as a professionally displaced person. Mother and Daughter, the translation. Oh, and before I start to read it, I would like for you to listen out to the kind of, well, I think is the change of point of view from the mother to the daughter in the last stanza. It's very subtle and it could apply to both parties, but I think it is definitely a switch of point of view. So this is Mother and Daughter, the translation. She says, "You look thin. Are you happy? I can never tell." Which means, I wish you were 10 years old, or 5, or 3. She says, let's sit in a cafe, you're not feeling well. Which means, let's spend more time together, you and me. She says, there's a nasty chill that comes in from the sea. Which means, I miss you terribly, don't settle here. I think I might stay childless, she says, over bitter tea. Which means, I can't take all this love, this grief, this fear. So now I'm going to move to some notices that I think I'm definitely sure listeners will be interested in. And first I want to give a big shout out to Michelle Alvey. Michelle is our branch chair, and we had the AGM just a couple of weeks ago, and so I want to pass on my thanks for her for willing to stand another year in that role, because she has been doing amazing things for our local branch. But the big news is that Michelle has just been awarded an 8-week Auckland Council's Regional Parks Artist in Residence. Oh, try saying that. For this year, and she'll be staying at the Bar Cottage for 8 weeks, so she obviously gets accommodation and a stipend while she's up there being the Regional Parks Artist in Resident, and that is right up her strata because she loves nature and the outdoors. So well done, Michelle. Congratulations. And speaking of residencies, I want to tell you about a couple of positive opportunities, because I'm sure listeners, you've all been aware in the news lately has been a bit grim when it comes to talking about residencies. Some well-known, long-standing creative residencies have been paused for next year. I'm talking about a couple of the ones down at the university, and also some specific writers' residencies in other places in New Zealand. So let's come back to the positive now about two amazing local opportunities right here in Otago, creative residencies, and I'm mentioning them specifically because the applications close at the end of this month. So the first is the Castleberg Trust Creative Residencies. That is right here on the Otago Peninsula at the Castleberg House and Studio. And there are various options available through the year. You can also, if you weren't lucky enough to get one of the paid-for residencies, so this is a bit like the Michael King residencies up in Auckland, you can also do a self-funded residency there. But have a crack, because the funded residencies applications close on the 31st of May. And then some new and exciting news even further down south, the Hone Tūwhare residencies. Hone Tūwhare, as you'll know, was very connected down here in Otago. He was a Burns Fellow back in the day and lived in Dunedin for a while and then retired down to a very basic little crib, as we call them, or batch, down at Kaka Point. Now that batch has now been fully refurbished and insulated, which is the key news for that far south in New Zealand. And they are now offering 3 separate residencies for creative writers. One is specifically for a Māori writer, another for a Māori poet, and then there is a more general New Zealand writer opportunity. They're all 3 months standing. You get the accommodation and the stipend as well. So Google Hone Tūwhare Trust, and I'm sure that will come up, and definitely worth applying for, and their deadline is the 1st of June, so pretty much the same time as the Castlebergs. Right, now let's have another music track, and this one is from the other side of the gender divide, and that it is sons celebrating that special relationship they have with their mothers, because I think, to be frank, mother-daughter relationships can be challenging. I know I've had the challenges with my own mother over the years, but I think sons inherently know, well, certainly in our family's case, that their mother is the president of their fan club. And when that post becomes vacant, no other applicant is really going to fulfil that role in the same way for the rest of their lives. So here is 660. I was going to call them a local band, but of course they've gone global since their early beginnings here in Dunedin. And here they are with Mother's Eyes.
To me, oh.
You're listening to Right On with me, Beverly Martens. Now, so I talked earlier in the show about residencies, and now I want to draw your attention to some other coming up opportunities, again, both with that May 31 deadline, which is why I want to talk about them. So the first is the Landfall Tōraka Essay Prize. That is a esteemed and long-running essay prize. So creative non-fiction really is its genre. It's worth $3,000, so it's definitely worth having a punt at, and it will be the winners and I think runners-up as well will be published in the Landfall 250th issue, which is the one I mentioned earlier this year, earlier in the show. The guest judge for that is the writer and a previous winner of the said essay competition, Tina Makaliti. And the second opportunity I want to mention also concerns Landfall, but it's a more general opportunity in that milestone 250th issue, which comes out in a couple of months. I mean, what an achievement for our premier literary journal to have been going all those years. I mean, it started, goodness, back in 1947, founded, of course, by Charles Brash, and edited by him for the first 50 years, followed by a roll call of esteemed writer-editors, including Emma Neal, who I mentioned earlier, and now, of course, Linley Edmeades, who's going to be at Mikaela's launch next week. So it's a high bar to aim for, but why wouldn't you want to give it a go? Because if you do succeed and your work is accepted, you're going to be in very good company, and also because it's the 250th issue, it's going to be a collector's piece later. So that is 2 Landfall opportunities. One is the Tauraka Essay Prize, and the other is the general submissions to their 250th issue, both of which applications close on the 31st of May. Right, and now in closing the show, I'm going to read a final poem, and also from the anthology I talked about earlier called Swings and Roundabouts. It's called The Strong Mothers, and it's by Rachel Bush. Rachel was a former teacher, raised in Hawera and later moved to Nelson. She's a poet. She had 3 volumes of poetry and work in various anthologies, obviously including this one. And just a sort of sidebar of interest, which I didn't know until recently, was that she was married to Richard Nuns, who was known for traditional Māori instruments in terms of keeping the practice of those musical instruments being played alive. So this is called The Strong Mothers. The reason I chose it is that I want to dedicate this to my own mother, who, can you believe it, is 95 years old today. 95, and that shows some indomitable spirit right there. Now, she may not be going strong mentally, but in her own self and personality, she's still very cheerful and very happy to be here. So, good on you, Mum. Now, this is called The Strong Mothers by Rachel Bush. It looks great on the page, but it is a hard poem to read aloud, so bear with me. Where are the mothers who held power and children, preserved peaches in season, understood about greens and 2 classes of protein, who drove cars or did not have a licence, who laughed, raged and were there? Take Mrs. Russell, who rode her irate bike, an upright fly that buzzed with a small engine on its back wheel, up South Road past the football school fields on her way to the hospital. Consider the other Mrs. Russell, drama judge, teacher of speech and elocution in a small front room, part-time reporter on the Hawera Star. And Mrs. Allingham, who had an MA in French, the university. Or Mrs. Smith, one knee stiff with TB, her tennis parties on Saturdays, adults on the banks and we smoked their cigarettes in the bamboo. Her legs shone, their skin in diamonds like a lizard's. Then Mrs. Chapman, who sang in the church choir, formed brooches from fresh white bread, made you look for a needle till you found it, heated records and shaped them into vases for presents, who did a spring display in the window of Gamage's hats. They have left the vowels uncorrected, the stories unproofed. They have rested their bicycles inside their garages, looked up the last word in Harrop's dictionary, let needles lie in the narrow dust between veranda boards. They have tested the last jam on a saucer by the window, comforted the last crying child they will ever see and left. How we miss them and their great strength. Wait for us, we say, wait for me. And they will. So that was for my mother, Hendrika Stravkarek, and that brings us pretty much to the end of our show. So I want to give out my thanks again to Mikaela, to, of course, University Bookshop, our sponsors, and to you, our listeners. And I want to tell you this: keep reading, keep writing, and keep warm. And I'll catch you next month with more news and views from New Zealand writers. So till then, ka kite.
What do you want to be when you grow up? They say you are what you read, and the University Bookshop can help you be whoever you want to be. Do you want to be an athlete? Then sit down with an inspiring sports biography. Do you fancy yourself as a detective? We have a grisly lineup of murder mysteries waiting just for you. Do you aspire to be the world's greatest chef? We have cookbooks to tantalise your taste buds. Do you want to celebrate your inner child? Play up in our fabulous children's room. The University Bookshop, helping you decide what you want to be when you grow up.
This podcast was produced by OAR FM Dunedin with support from New Zealand On the Air.